Hello and welcome back to Bookish. Today I want to do a review of my only Man Booker Prize list read this year, and that's Michael Ondaatje's Warlight. So Michael Ondaatje is a well-known author who's won the Man Booker before. I think he won the Golden Man Booker. He's the author probably most famously of The English Patient. So Warlight tells the story of a young man or a young boy who, along with his sister, was abandoned by their parents immediately in the years immediately after World War II under mysterious circumstances. The circumstances under which his parents abandoned he and his sister become somewhat clear throughout the course of the novel. They're left in the care of what he's told, what he and his sister are told, are friends of their mother and father, but who appear to be, from the point of view of the young 13 to 15-year-old boy who is at the heart of the novel, the main character of the novel, they appear to be criminals. These people who the narrator assumes might be involved in criminal activity, some of which probably are, take care of, watch after, look over the kids in a really loosely defined way up until a major event takes place which reunites the boy and his sister with their mother, and then leads the novel off into a different direction, which really is, in some ways, an exploration of the mother's life and her activities during World War II, and the young man, the main character's effort to reconstruct her life to better understand his own. Ondaatje is the most celebrated, maybe best known writer on the Man Booker list this year, and as such his novel is what you'd expect. It's a well-crafted novel by a writer with great experience who's learned a lot about writing, and there's not a lot negative to say about the writing, except that occasionally I would say that Ondaatje introduces concepts or ideas or images that are somewhat jarring, that don't seem to flow particularly well with what he's been saying. It's possible that this is on purpose. I think Ondaatje either is your taste or he isn't. I kind of like him. I kind of like the way he writes. I kind of like his books. I like the way his imagination works, and I like his character development quite a bit. So I don't mind Ondaatje. I wouldn't say he's my favorite writer by any means, but I have an appreciation for what he does, and I realize that not everybody does, and I think that's fine. This book, which I mentioned to you, is nominated for was longlisted for the Man Booker Award this year, is to me, not a great book. I would rate it as good or okay. I have a feeling that one reason why I might give it my second highest rating of good is because of Ondaatje's reputation. So there's part of me who wants to tell you that this novel really is just okay. As I said, the craftsmanship is top rate. Ondaatje's a good writer. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to create characters. He knows how to create an interesting plot. He usually knows how to keep the story, the action moving forward. And he knows how to do that all in a beautiful way for the most part, but that doesn't mean that this book is without flaws. I took notes on the book as I was going through, and some of those notes became increasingly frustrated with some aspects of the book. So the first note I wrote, after I think I was only maybe 30 or 40 pages into the book, was that the book at time feels like that Ondaatje had just gone to his notebook of interesting characters. Characters who he maybe fleshed out as a sketch, who he intended to use later, and he just put a whole bunch of those kind of sketch-like characters into the book. And there's something, there's a little bit, something about that's a little bit disingenuous. It feels like he had a story in mind, and he just filled it with, not stock characters, but for him, characters he thought about maybe not necessarily in context of the story, and then made their story fit with the context of the story. There's, all kinds of odd, quirky characters who show up in the first half of the book that give it that kind of impression that maybe Ondaatje was just going through a list of characters or a book of characters he'd thought up but hadn't included in the novel yet. In addition to that, the first part of the novel, the part of the novel where the young man and his sister are abandoned by their parents, has a really Dickensian feel. I mean, it's set in London. The people who looked after them have colorful names and obscure, colorful backgrounds. There's the person who's primarily in charge of looking after them, who they call the Moth. The young man falls into and really comes to admire this minor criminal who is referred to as the Pimlico Darter, or as just the Darter. And so, in some ways, there's a certain Dickensian feel to this first part of the book that does go away as you go on in the book. Once the event happens, which leads to the reunification, I guess, of the young man with his mother, then it becomes more of a sort of slowly revealed story where the young man, now grown, is talking in his present tense about events that took place in the past and trying to come to a better understanding of his mother and their lives and what had happened to him and why he had been abandoned. He loses touch with his sister. He rarely makes an emotional connection with his mother. It's not that they fight or that he dislikes her or hates her, but there's just a difficult relationship for reasons that you have to kind of read the novel to find out. She is a very closed person who is not open to sharing a lot of information about herself, and she is a creature of habits, and those habits she feels like keep her safe. For me, the book kind of fell apart in the last section. Up until you get to the last two sections, or maybe the next to the last section of the novel, the story's been told from the first-person point of view of this boy turned young man, and it's always in his voice, and it's always him saying what happened to him, or what he was saying, or what was said to him, and he's always witness to the things that he describes. And then all of a sudden, in the next to the last chapter, all of a sudden we are inside the mind of his mother, and we're living out the events of her life, and the events that then help explain why she abandoned her children and why she is the way she is. And this was just really jarring to me, and I think we're supposed to believe that the young man, as he finds small clues, I think at one point he says he can take a grain of sand and make a whole ocean out of it, or something like that. I think we're supposed to believe that he is imagining all these things and putting himself in his mother's point of view. You know, the section before the section that I'm talking about ends with him kind of, actually I think laying in her bed and trying to think like she thinks. And that's all well and good, but there's no way you can believe that this character would create in detail the things he creates, like seduction scenes between his mother and a man who isn't his father. I don't know that young men think on the level of detail about their mothers in the way that this takes place. So anyway, it just felt to me like that Ondaatje had almost taken the easy way out. Instead of creating a longer novel in which he finds good ways to reveal these details about the young man's mother, he just throws himself in the young man in the mother's mind and has him know things he can't possibly know, and imagine things that I don't think he would possibly imagine. And that shortcut was really kind of disappointing to me. If you kind of describe where I was with the book, I would start off at the beginning of the book saying this was a good book, and by the end I'm really thinking the book's only okay. There's also a fairly obvious plot line involving the young man and a young girl that he essentially meets, and they meet clandestinely, essentially to have sex on a fairly regular basis when he's about 15, and then who he loses track with after this big event which reunites him with his mother around the age of 17. And you may have already guessed where that plot point is going. I found that to be somewhat disappointing as well, and not particularly well handled. Anyway, like I said, I would rate Warlight by Michael Ondaatje as an okay book. I think that you can read it. I think you can enjoy it. But if you're looking for a great novel that I think is consistent in the way it treats the reader, I don't think this is that book. Anyway, if you've read Warlight, please let me know what you think in the comments, or just comment on the review in general. Thank you for watching.